Wellness has gotten a bit watered down, and maybe, just maybe, it's time to take it back. So that's exactly what Falyn, Morningstar, and Ian Morris are doing. They're breaking the mold when it comes to wellness. But science meets sound. We're going to really talk about what that really even means. And this is Gloves Off. I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sundar, and this is a show where we cut through the noise, we cut through the disruption that's out there in health, in wealth, in impact, and we really sit down and talk with leaders who are redefining success, doing things differently, and cutting through all the garbage that's out there so that we can get to what really matters. And today's guests are doing just that. And I'm so excited to dive deep into this conversation because not only are they creating things together, they're doing things individually. So we're going to break that part down. So let's talk about what Falyn does. So she's the creator of Radiant Balance System, where functional testing meets nervous system healing. And then Ian is doing his own thing with listening to Smile, which is his company, and it's frequency-minded music that basically transforms how we experience sound. Now, what I love about them is that they're doing their own individual things, but then they also do things together and support each other because they're bridging art, science, consciousness into one powerful wellness model. And I just think it's so unique and wonderful. They're also building a global movement that's raising the standard of what healthy really means. Because no matter what we know about health and wellness, there's always more to learn. And that's what I love about doing this show. I get to meet people like this who are just changing people's lives in different ways. So let's welcome Falyn and Ian to Gloves Off.
Thank you so much for having us, Dr. Kalpana.
Oh, yeah. So great to have you guys here. And oh, if I didn't mention, the show opener with the cool music was done by them.
I actually had goosebumps as it was playing. I was like, okay, this is good.
I really love it. I mean, it is just, again, frequency is so important. And I think that is probably where I want to start the conversation, because I think you two are really just such a power couple. I love that you are doing your own things individually. Neither one of you are squashing what the other person wants to do. It's more of this collective, this collective approach where you've got your things that you started and are working on. She's doing her things. And then together you're expanding it. And I just love that concept because sometimes in a lot of relationships, I've seen that it's either one person's thing or the other person's thing that's the more important. And I don't know that that's the way it should really be. I don't really agree with that whole way. And so I love that you're not doing that. So maybe we could start with Ian and talk about the frequency and what does that mean? How does that transmit into sound, wellness? We want to hear all about it.
Yeah. Well, I think the easiest example that I always like to use is how much influence our friends have on us, right? And what I mean by that is the people we hang out with the most, and that can be family members, it could be best friends, it could be intimate partners, whoever you're spending the most time around, their attitude and the energy, the vibration that they're carrying will rub off on you. And you hear people talk about this constantly in the business world, right? You are the top 12 people or top 5 people you surround yourself with. Look around, that's where you're going to be, right? And so I think it's the human brain has this frequency follow response where, why binaural beats work so well with, helping to facilitate different brainwave states is because honestly we are very susceptible to those things around us, right? So like you'll see people hold hard boundaries on diets, like I don't eat that, and people are like, oh come on, just a little bit, and then so a little bit becomes a lot, and it's like a lot of us have these boundaries because we know that we can fall out of routine very easily. So for me, frequency is just a tool that is one of those friends that's around you at all times. It's like cheering you on and also giving you kind of that reminder of where you should be, right? You have those friends who are happy and they're positive outlook on life and you see them being very successful, and then you find yourself like down and they're like, hey man, It's a bad day, shake it off. It's going to be all right. Get back tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. And I think that for me, that's what these frequencies that we put together in songs are, these tools that we can pull out when no one's around, when we're having a struggle or a tough day, and we can put them on and it can help us reset. And I think that's just one of the easiest ways to help people understand the justification for trying sound healing or frequency therapy or therapeutic music. It's things that music is just such a amplifier of whatever intention you give it. You see it at sporting events where they cheer people on and get them pumped up. You see it when movies are played for very romantic, intimate scenes, connecting people. So, music is just such a powerful tool. And so for us, that's what it really means. Frequency-minded music is really the focus on the intention and the frequency to target whatever target focus we're working with.
Well, I love that. I just think it's such an interesting concept. And I remember when I first talked to you about it, I was like, wow, never really thought about it that way. And then how does that tie in at all to what you're doing, Falyn, with your radiant balance system?
Absolutely. There are certain frequencies that organs have in our body. Say if we have overgrowth of certain bacteria or like H. pylori infection, there's a certain vibration that bacteria has, right? So say if we're trying to eradicate something, or say if we're trying to help the liver detox, we can incorporate these frequencies to enhance our own bodily functions, right? Or maybe, like, for example, if we're trying to work on brain fog or just mental clarity or, mental rejuvenation, maybe there's onset dementia or Parkinson's. And there's scientific studies that note 40 hertz as being that great frequency to help those onset cognitive declines. So how I use it in my practice is just that, right? We are using the lab tests to help us uncover those hidden stressors of different organs or overgrowths of microbes. But then we're saying, hey, how can we check in with your nervous system? Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood or your past, of how that person was melded into the person they are today? And so we get to see, are they more in the sympathetic state, which majority of people are, or the parasympathetic? Do they have that nervous system flexibility? And if not, how can we add in that flexibility? So those calming tracks, like maybe, Ian's tuning this music to 444 hertz and it's a root chakra, right? Maybe that's a very grounding track for them to be able to be centered again, to calm down in that parasympathetic. So absolutely, it plays so much into the work that I do with myself personally and with my clients.
I love that, because again, some people out there watching this may just feel like this is all woo, but there's a lot of science backing on this too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's just not mainstream, but this is science backed. So I just want to put that out there. So when we talk about frequency, obviously we're hearing the frequencies, each organ transmits a certain frequency, and frankly, people transmit certain frequencies. So there are people who are in a lower vibration. That's what we often say is a lower vibration, the people in a higher vibration. When somebody of higher vibration is constantly surrounded by somebody in a lower vibration, it brings their vibration down. But the opposite is also true, that it helps that person. But the problem is the higher vibration person is often drained if there's too much of a delta. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. I was even going to bring in food as an example. Right? When we're eating that lower quality food,
true.
we feel lethargic, tired, gut distress, bloating, etc. So like you can tell when you're in this higher vibration, you do not have bloating. You have this energy, this vitality about you. So even relating it to the food quality and the rest, right? We know that if we're working on our screens for until 11 p.m. in the evening, right, with no like blue blockers on or dimmed lights, and we're trying to fall asleep, maybe in the morning, we still feel kind of maybe wired, tired, or we feel this, wow, did I even sleep? Or, it's everything. Frequency is everything. So I just wanted to add that in.
Oh, it's so true. And I don't think we realize how important it really is. I have just gotten into this more and more recently. And I've seen how much frequency affects everything in my life. And to be honest with you, I have my home environment is also specifically curated with frequency. If I touch something and the frequency is off, it's out. I don't even care. That's, that goes to clothing, just things that I've just gotten very sensitive to it all of a sudden. I don't have a reason for why. Maybe you can explain it to me, but all of a sudden things don't match. And I go, yeah, I don't know. I can't have that anymore. I don't know why, but it's gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hear I have friends, and I have been an artist, musician, and poet most of my life, and I'll have these conversations with friends, from high school and, back that long ago. And they'll say like, well, so-and-so did this and then he changed. And I'm like, well, he did change because he changed his life. And so he leveled up, and you're still operating from the same level that you guys were on in college. And so he's made these shifts and changes, in his life, and it's changed the vibration. And so oftentimes I even find that, and maybe you can relate to this as well, but you'll have conversations with people from your past, and it's almost like you can't communicate anymore because it's like there's just a change in the vibration to a point where it's just not resonant anymore. And so I think that happens sometimes. Like, we might listen to music from high school and college and then revisit it and say, I'm not really feeling this that much anymore, right? And so that can happen with clothing and styles. I think, they say every 7 years we're kind of going through these cycles, in this existence of life where we're kind of growing and shedding. It's a process of growth. And so I think, like, I always try to help our clients really empower themselves and ground in the experience of how things are making them feel now, not in the past and not what they think it's going to do in the future, but right now in the here and now. How is this feeling to you? Does it feel resonant? Does it feel like you could do without it? And I think it's just interesting to allow ourselves that space and that time to kind of feel into things and try to really not worry about what other people are thinking or what the perception will be, but how is it really working for us? And I think a lot of social media and a lot of the just world today is geared towards making everyone else have this certain perception of you. And I just think it's neat that frequency can really help ground people, but it can also help amplify things like encourage and excitement and joy and peace. And so
I feel authenticity is one of the that's been said. Authenticity is the highest frequency you can have. And that's even a greater frequency than even love itself. And it's so true because there's some freedom that comes from authenticity that I don't know. And I'm all about freedom. That's a big one for me. Those are the words that I love: truth, freedom, integrity. Those are the things that are real pillars of my existence. And I love the fact that what authenticity has done for me has given me such a freedom. And I can see it even in the evolution of this show. When I go back and watch episodes of when I first started, I was definitely buttoned up. I didn't think I was, of course, but I was afraid to say certain things. I was afraid to approach these woo topics for fear that I would be, seen a certain way. And, the reality is that I'm here to bring the truth forward. And there are a lot of things out there that are not mainstream that people don't talk about, but that doesn't mean that they're not true. And that does not mean that they're not useful. And that's what I like doing now. So I think that's where I've changed my whole frequency, meaning I don't care. I don't care what people think anymore. I truly don't, which is a great place to be. And if they don't like it, they don't need to watch the show.
Yeah.
That's the reality, because, you really have to call out who you want and you have to call out who you don't want. I mean, sometimes it's important to be polarizing in that way. But I enjoy all these things. I enjoy talking to people who are disruptors, who do things differently, take different things and put them together in a very non-traditional way. Just because it's not traditional doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah. You have a good perspective, and it's hard because I do have a traditional sense, but then it's like as I've grown in my consciousness, I feel like that has dramatically expanded. Mm-hmm. You were mentioning becoming more of a sensitive person, like choosing, cotton bed sheets or clothing or whatever. And I have felt that same way. Ian as well. I think I can speak for him when I say, like, as we're growing in our evolution in our consciousness, we do become more sensitive individuals, whether that is to light, to poor food, if we eat out at a restaurant and some sort of seed oil doesn't agree with us, or whatever it is. And sometimes it can be looked at as, oh my gosh, why am I so sensitive? But then other times it's a blessing, because it's like, that's not me anymore, right? I don't need to revisit that. Or it's just like a little message of, okay, we don't need to eat at that restaurant again. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's just continuing to try to up level you.
Right. And sometimes it might not even just be the food. That's what I've noticed. I've gone back to places I used to like, and the food may be the same, and it's not that it's bad or anything, but maybe it was the vibe of the staff. Maybe it felt something was off in the decor for me now. Not that it changed or it's bad. It just isn't right for me now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real thing. It happens to me quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how our evolutions, and some of us I've always joked, because I've said, I just wind up, I don't want to say I've burned through people, but a lot, I actually evolved very quickly. So literally whatever I was doing last week, I'm not the same person in a week. And this happens to me a lot, and it's been this way. And I used to hate it, but now I just think, it's okay. The people who can keep up and, are constantly evolving are the ones that are going to be around me. And I didn't think those people existed, but they do. So that's the great thing. And then now I feel free to evolve as I see fit. And I think that's what happens once we start raising our consciousness, raising our frequency, raising our standards. We do actually draw in the people that are a right fit, because I feel like we all have to come together, because we have similar missions out there. The people that I connect with, we all have a similar mission. They're all but we have different ways of doing it, if that makes any sense. I may do it through my podcasts and through public speaking and events, and you guys are doing it through music and frequency. And so it's just great when we can see all those things, right? And incorporate them, because we're just looking for a better world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'll just say this quickly, but I think the biggest part of where we felt the need to connect our services was last year. We went on tour, started at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, doing an event there, and then made it all the way up to Niagara Falls and Canada, and then back down. And what was interesting at the events is we would run into so many people, and there would be people who were extremely physically fit, but they would be complaining, saying, like, I'm just struggling so hard with my spiritual and mental clarity, and I'm struggling with the person I'm becoming. And then we had people that were not so fit, but just really dialed in spiritually and mentally and mindfulness. They were practicing 2-3 times a day, and they seemed very committed to their practice. And each side was struggling. And yes, there were a few people that had the best of both worlds, but it was so rare on this tour that we just both said, like, I used to be 300 pounds. I went through massive transformation in my life, and Falyn has a similar story in a different way. And we knew that for us, we're constantly striving to grow and evolve and to find more balance between these two worlds. And so it was just a no-brainer. She's doing nutrition, physical fitness, and clinical testing. And then I'm working with the frequencies and the mindfulness, and we just put it together for this kind of full spectrum approach. And I think it's every person we're working with, we're seeing the shedding take place of the old life, and then the kind of guilt and remorse and sadness, the grief of letting people go, letting jobs go, letting things that they're holding on to. And then once they let go, it's kind of like that rubber band effect, where it's been holding them back for so long that when they finally let go, you're seeing this new person just kind of launch into the stratosphere. And it's just such a humbling and just cool experience to be a part of, to see growth like that in so many people, where we can just be the tool that's, placing the tool in front of them, or can just be that word of reasoning or that, encouragement that can help them just let that go. And I think that we've been that in each other's lives, and we're learning better how to do that each day. And it's just neat to be able to put this all together and, into that offering.
That's so great. And it's so true, because people in general do have a hard time letting things go. I know I do too. I mean, some things are easier for me to let go than others. And we all have to work on that. But every single time I've let something go, I can tell you that the thing that came in after has been so much better for me than whatever it was that I let go, whether it was friendships or, consulting with clients that were not right for me. All of those things I've seen is the minute I shed it, and now I have a very hard no. My body reacts it's very dramatic now. I kind of can't put up with it anymore. I used to be able to, but now I just notice once I start feeling that thing in my body, I say, oh, okay, well, this has to go. And I don't really argue with it. I don't really question it. So, but it's a hard thing. I think it's like a muscle. You have to exercise it. And I think the more you exercise it, and then if you start letting things go, you see the things that come in, then now you have proof that something good will happen. So you get less afraid to let things go.
Yeah, it's like you're redeveloping that relationship with yourself, just that knowing and that trust. I have found that in my life, and I'm by no means an expert. Sometimes the voice or the intuition is very light, where I need to hear it a couple times to be like, okay, I hear you now. I'll move forward. So it definitely is a journey. And just to add to what Ian mentioned, I have worked with clients. This one in particular is coming to mind, where she had test after test, like traditional blood work, or maybe worked with a gastro, and it wasn't like there was any solutions happening, right? And the mindset of just going to the traditional route or the Western style is one thing, and I think there totally is a time and a place for that sort of work. But for us, her and I, to work together and to expand that education and that knowledge and experience of adding in the music, right? Because I have added in those albums to my package. Depending on what the needs of the client are, I'll adjust what the albums are chosen. So it was cool to see how the albums, the somatic exercises for some nervous system regulation, how those tools made her be like, at the end of our program when we recapped, it was like, I didn't really think about this, like how this would work for me. I just thought it was a little bit woo-woo, but I'm really glad that you opened my eyes to these tools, because it's so necessary. I found that in my own health when I went through the traditional way. Well, not traditional, we'll say functional health, doing some lab testing, incorporating it, uplifting the diet, and focusing on my circadian rhythm and different exercises rather than just powerlifting like I was doing. And that wasn't the whole puzzle. It wasn't until I opened my mind into meditation, into regulating myself, checking in with these different parts of myself. Am I allowing my anger part to be expressed if I have a kind of intense conversation, or am I just kind of shutting that down, like you had mentioned a little bit ago? And it's almost like you can't have one without the other. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it makes me excited to be Ian's partner and to have our businesses link up in that way, because we're learning just as much as we're helping other people and guiding them. You know what I mean? So it's really cool.
I love that. And so how would you say this has transformed your lives? I mean, not only maybe individually, but collectively as a partnership and as a couple?
For me personally, when I was a kid, I remember being into dance, into art, and then it was a transition that I got more into sports, and then it was business, and then it was working in local government and environmental engineering. And so you'll see that it was almost like, I don't know who pushed me towards that direction, but the femininity or the creativity was lost. And with being with Ian, that has opened back up to remembering that I am a creative person. I don't need to, I mean, I love the data. I love connecting the dots and everything, but to add in the flow to add in the creativity, I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually am creative. I can tap into this side of me that makes me excited to actually want to write a poem. I'm like, I'm not a writer, and time and time again, just like you were saying, like practice makes perfect, and ingraining that, it's been a really cool exploration to not only, open that door of writing, but open the door of doing art, right? The paintings behind us are something that Ian and I did together. And what else? What else did we do?
Playing music.
Yes, learning the guitar again. When I was younger, again, I played guitar, but Ian has been my teacher of just picking up an instrument again. And, now I have a flute and a tongue drum, and just expanding in that way has been really
a tongue
cool.
drum? What is that?
A tongue drum. You can explain that.
It's kind of like it's just a steel drum that has these like tongue grooves cut into it, and you hit it with
I'm
a mallet.
imagining Falyn's tongue on a drum, and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, it's not large by any means, but it looks like an oval shaped drum almost. And then you'll have
cool.
some mallets to play like different notes. It's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Well, and that's so great that you are supporting each other with not only your businesses, but with your passions and with your artistic and creative expressions. Because, Falyn, you bring up a really good point about that feminine flow and the creativity. When we as creative beings are forced into some sort of job or environment where that creativity is constricted, we don't have the full expression of ourselves. And generally, we tend to feel unbalanced or off. I know I felt that way in medicine because it was so didactic. And I didn't enjoy really medicine in that way. I think there's more to medicine and how it should be practiced than just all that academia and didactics. I mean, there's a lot of intuition in medicine. And you know what? You can't really use that in medicine, because if it's not in a peer-reviewed journal and if the big pharma doesn't have a study on it, basically it's wrong and you can get sued for it. I mean, really, that's the end of the day. But there were so many times that I knew that intuitively that wasn't the right thing for the person.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really utilize that not as much as I wanted to. Sometimes it was within a realm of rationale that I could, but most of the time I couldn't. So that was made it problematic for me. I see a new evolution of healing. I don't know how long this will take, that incorporates all the different modalities where we all work together as healers. As Western practitioners, we don't poo-poo acupuncture. As, practitioners of acupuncture, we incorporate Western medicine when it's necessary. We include frequency healing. We include sound. We include anything that, emotional healing, intuition, all of that. That is the greater expression of us as human beings. We are not just one small thing. And I think the more we see that, we start to understand that there's so much out there. And that's what I love about this, because we start seeing each other as vibrations and as spiritual beings and all of that. It changes our perception drastically. And then all of a sudden the stuff doesn't sound so woo, because it actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And last thing I'll say, and then I'll pass it to you, but I think one of the biggest pieces, not only in this relationship, but in life, is where do you feel safe, right? Because when you feel safe, you have that capacity or maybe that desire to expand because you feel safe enough. So I just wanted to add that was another thing that I think has helped me flourish in that creativity.
I love that, because really that's what a relationship should do. You should be your own two individual selves, and then together you want to be a better version of yourself because the other person is in your life. Because God knows if you're a worse version of yourself, that's not the right way to go.
Yeah. I think for me and the relationship, one of the biggest things I've noticed is the masculine and feminine, and in each other. There's ways where I'm definitely more feminine, and what I mean by that is like I'm super sensitive, super creative, super intuitive, super like in the flow and spontaneous, and that's a very kind of more feminine style energy. And because I'm working with people in a healing capacity, I had one of the biggest compliments that was ever given to me. There was a woman that said, you know, I've seen Joe Dispenza, I've seen Bruce Lipton, I've seen Jonathan Goldman, I've seen, you know, she was naming all the sound healers and all the people that she's been to their conferences. And she came to our event and she said that I was the most balanced masculine and feminine energy that she had ever been around, where she said, I see the masculine come out of you, but I see the feminine, and I see how you hold people, and each person you're dealing with, you use a different style of interacting with them. And she's like, that's how a healer should be. And I was just like, wow, me? I was like, oh, thanks, you know. So I'm like a Leo over here, just like absorbing it, like, thank you so much, you know. But you know, it's like, but it was really sweet, and I think it really helped me to kind of gain an awareness of when I was growing up and I was into poetry and art and music, there was a lot of guys that I played baseball and football and, you know, sports with that were like, oh, that's stupid. You should, you know, that's a waste of time. And I was like, I don't know, guys, girls like this stuff, you know? So it was kind of like, you know, keeping that sphere and like learning and evolving of like what really spoke to me, even if the people I was hanging out with weren't really into that. And then fast forward to this situation with, you know, this relationship with Falyn. One of the most healing things I think I've ever come across is the softness that Falyn gives to me out of all the relationships I've ever had in my life. She shows up, and even when I am wrong, you know, and like in the wrong, like I look at back and I say, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I should have done this, or, you know, she's still holding such a softness, and she'll tell you, you know, what's going on. She's going to have the communication, but it's not in a way that's threatening or beating me down. It's like, I want you to grow into this where you're being held and supported and being the best man, best version of you. And I think that we're doing that in our relationship to the best of our ability, and we're learning every day. But I think that when we go to show up at an event and there's that masculine energy and that feminine energy, it's holding space for so many more people than if I just showed up or if Falyn just showed up. And I think that it's different. There might be a woman that responds to masculine energy better, or she might respond to feminine energy better. And it's the same with a man. He might, you know, one way or the other. And I think we cover a lot of bases by doing this partnership. And because we have these different gifts and we're combining it, I think it's just, for me, it's been one of the most harmonious, you know, amazing things to be a part of. So.
Oh, I love hearing stuff like that. See, that's just beautiful. And you know, when I want to just point out that when we're talking about these masculine and feminine energies, you know, they're not static. They're in flow. So, you know, there may be something in Falyn that's maybe she has more of a masculine energy towards, and maybe you have more of a feminine, and there's a polarity there, and vice versa. So I just wanted to point that out because I don't want people to think it's static. So even in one human being, it's not static. You know, I think maybe there are people that maybe have a little bit of, I don't know, maybe I'm going to tell you, I'm not sure about this because I can only speak for me because I'm only with myself as far as, you know, what I know about me. I know that in certain ways I have a very masculine energy. When it comes to running my business and all those things, I have a very masculine energy. My personal relationships, I have a very feminine energy. But then again, you know, even the things I do are very different. I play the piano, and then literally I could stop playing the piano and I would go punch the bag and go do martial arts, which are very different things. And I think that I choose things that bring out the full expression of me, even though they don't make sense to a lot of other people. And then I love fashion handbags and shoes and all these things. And I love wearing makeup. But then some days I'm a complete tomboy. I don't want to wear any makeup. I don't want to do any of that. I just have all these different sides of me.
That's cool.
I feel like that's the best. It reminds me of this, you know, this month we have an album that came out. It's called Soul Mastery, and one of the track titles is called All Parts of Me, and it reminds me of exactly that, of just,
I have to listen to that.
There's different instruments at different times that just flow in, and it's almost like adding these parts to yourself, right? And just like allowing that to be expressed. So it made me think of that song. You have to check it out. Yeah.
And it was so fun when we did the show opener and we were having the conversations about that. And I that was what made me realize that I had to understand me so I could explain it to you what I wanted to show in that show opener, because
Yeah.
it's not, there's so many different things that I wanted to have. And then how do you put all that into something that's 30 seconds with the right music to convey the right emotion? And that's what I said for the audience out there. I said to Ian, I said, I don't know, you do your thing. I'm just going to tell you what I got to tell you, and I'll give you the images. You're going to have to figure it out because I don't know. But you did a great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite things. Like, we'll work on meditation albums with people, or coaching albums, or even courses, and intro and outros for videos and podcasts and things like that. And I think it's neat to see somebody's vision and for them to kind of tell you what it is they're looking for. And it's almost like a challenge accepted. It's like you're like, okay, let's see if we can create what's in their head. And so it's been a fun process, because we're working with like pain doctors and hypnotherapists and life coaches, but we're also working with like yoga teachers and massage therapists and things like that. But more recently, we've even had like Airbnbs and hotels that are calling us, asking us to do some things for them. So it's been a really we get to, Falyn helps a lot, and we get to use our creativity, and it's a lot of fun. So
I think that's awesome, because it's so true, because just like a song can take you back to whatever the first time you heard it was. We know we have these songs that we haven't heard for 20, 30 years, but the minute you hear that song, it takes you right back to where you were, what you were doing. It's almost instantaneous. In that same way, when we were talking about this frequency music, when people hear that specific sound to the podcast, I want them to know it's mine. And I don't want to have some other song on there. I just want that to be so uniquely me that's why this resonated. And, just for all of you guys out there, we had started talking, Ian, Falyn, and I think I called you Ian earlier. I'm so sorry. I mix that up all the time with you.
Okay. Yeah,
I know somebody else, because I know somebody else who says it's Ian, and I always get that mixed up for some reason. But what you were telling me about licensing for music. So I want you to explain that to the audience, because I don't think a lot of people know that this is a thing. So
yeah, well, so for me, what we've tried to do with our business is create a licensing system that we call a full range license, or a multi-use license. And most places, like if you license a song for a podcast, you would have to relicense it to put it on an album, or relicense it to put on a video for the most part. So there's a lot of steps
double
that people kind of double and triple taxed for things. And I understand, because that's the old model. I think for us, we're trying to move into a new paradigm where we've offered for people to pay a one-time yearly fee, and then what they're able to do is anything that they need music for. So we're talking like social media posts, videos, podcasts, things like that. But then they also have support. A lot of people have questions about frequency and things like that. And so one of the things that comes up a lot is the music licensing. And they'll say, so if I buy the $10, charge from Spotify, I can use this with my practice. And I said, no, that's not correct. And then they'll say, wow, I can't believe, why. And so I'll say, what you're paying for in a subscription like that is you're paying for your car use, like listening to it in your car, listening to it at your house. When you cross into a business and you're using that service, you're breaking copyright law. And the reason is there's a couple things. A lot of people will say, well, I saw where Trump or, Bill Clinton used this song in their campaign, and then they got sued or got threatened to get sued because they didn't ask permission to use it. And so that's a very classic example. There might be a musician who doesn't align with that political view and says, hey, I don't want my music used in that way. So one, you're giving permission to use the person's song, which I think is very important. I think anyone can say, I would like my stuff to be used by my permission and not in something I disagree with. And then two, I think it's also that you're going to be able to make money or create opportunity from utilizing this person's IP, intellectual property. And so if that is going to be present, there needs to be some kind of compensation, just like anyone else would want if somebody was using their intellectual property. So it's very interesting is that most of the licensing houses services that we know. It's basically almost like the mafia fee. Pay us the money or you'll get sued. It's kind of like what it comes down to. But for us, we said there has to be a better way. So we're saying pay us the money and support the work that we're doing on a monthly basis. Every month we put out a new, so this is 10 years, and next month, 10 years that we've been doing an album every single month, which is huge.
Congrats.
That's a huge undertaking. But basically we're saying, hey, we want to give you 3 or 4 different ways to make your money back, earn multiple revenue streams, and to show you how you can utilize this to build a brand, just like you're doing with, you've created your own new sound that's not going to be available anywhere else. They're going to hear it and associate it with your show. So, but then that can travel over to people's social media, their website, the videos that they're making, the courses that they're making. So they're taking control of their brand, and they're creating other upsells and opportunities and offerings from this branded music. And I think it's just a really different approach. It's supporting human creators, and it's also supporting small, mid, and large size businesses that are looking to expand and create extra value for their community.
I love that. I love that. And that's the thing. People don't really understand that. They don't know that they're breaking copyright law, because you go into many businesses, you're hearing all the songs everywhere. I didn't even know that was a thing, because I think it's broken so often. Go into med spas, you go into doctors' offices. I mean, those are places that are doing this regularly. And then you even told me you can't just play Spotify in there. And I just had no idea. So this is really interesting. So, for any of you folks, and we have a code, right? It's Sundar 20, right? I was like, I got to remember my own code. So basically, I'm going to pop this on here so you guys can take a look. But this is the link to the website. You can get a good idea of what they offer. Again, there are albums that drop every month. You can get an idea. They have all this cool stuff. I don't know what it's called. I'm going to bring you back on here. What is this stuff that you... Hang on, let me get myself back on here. I was like, wait, let me get everybody back on here. I was clicking the wrong button. That didn't help. But how do you create those little maps within those downloadable documents? What are those called? Those are cool.
Yeah, so we trademarked the expanded experience PDF. And the reason that we did that is most digital music these days comes with just a thumbnail to represent the album that you're downloading. And I'm just such a connoisseur of art, music, and culture that I wanted to create an experience that was unique and fun for our community. And so when someone buys our music or buys into the program, every month they get a PDF download. And so the PDF is a full mini universe journey that is a dynamic, clickable, all the artwork and everything is clickable. It takes you to different resources and different pages and more information. So it's art, music, resources, poetry. And it's just a full encompassed, almost like if you can imagine an escape room and a scavenger hunt with an artsy approach put together all in one document. And so the response was so well, that's what brought the hotels and Airbnbs and all those different people. And they would say, man, we love what you're doing with this album. Can you do something like this for our customers? We have a new product, or we have a book that we're promoting. And so we started making the PDFs for other people. And it's a way, like we stopped using business cards. We use our PDF, and you can use them as invitations. You can use them as, business cards. You can use them as an actual experience for a product or service. So it's a lot of fun, and it just makes the experience really unique for people.
That's really cool. I mean, you obviously are very creative, both of you. So I love that you're able to express your creativity along with your business. And not only that, it's enhancing other people's lives, but your union and your businesses are even enhancing your own life and your own relationship. So, and your health, wealth, and well-being. It just hits all the things. I love it. But I'm so glad that we got to interview you. Are there any other last thoughts that we didn't cover that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. When you guys look at the website from the QR code, that's to the main Listening to Smile website, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So if you want to join and be a member, the albums, like Ian mentioned, are released every single month. So the PDF the music is inside of the PDF. So it's downloadable. You can create your own playlists for, use in personal client sessions or on workshops, live or in person. So, and the website also gives you like a contact link for us if you have any questions with that. But I just wanted to mention that and appreciate everybody checking out this video, and for you, Dr. Kalpana, to have us today.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And yes, thank you for clarifying that. So everybody, I'm going to put that link back up just for a second before we finalize. And then I'm going to play the show intro again as the outro. So if you missed it, you're going to see it again and can kind of put it in the context of what we talked about, because I think that makes it super fun. And frankly, I just like seeing it again. I don't know. It just feels like me. I don't know how to explain that. But to me, there are things that I've seen, but this feels uniquely me. And that's, I think, my favorite thing about it is the show is an essence of me. So the intro has to be as well.
Yeah,
yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for sharing all of this with us. We appreciate it so much. And thank you for being a guest on Gloves Off. And maybe we'll have to have you back. I'm sure if it's like another year, there's going to be all kinds of new things going on. We'll have to have you back on the show.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, guys. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm going to stick this up here because I don't think I had it up there for too long earlier. So you can check that out. Again, there's the PDFs, there's the downloadable music. So please check it all out. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next week for another episode of Gloves Off.